all know who this man is. He needs no introduction, but I'll give it anyway. He's the voice of Sunday Night Football in America on NBC, among other sports that he covers for the Peacock Network. He is Al Michaels. Good to have you back here, sir.
Good to be here.
Now, how many years have you had season tickets for your beloved Los Angeles Kings?
23.
23 years.
Mm-hmm. And then before that, we had partial season tickets, but 23 full seasons.
Right. And the reason why your LA Kings didn't even make the playoffs this year is because you got a chance to spend a lot of time in Staples the last several Aprils.
They were exhausted.
Mays
The Kings played in 3 years something like 63 playoff games. So in 3 years, they played 4 seasons. So they just missed the playoffs. They'll be back next year. You watch.
Okay. And you went to Game 7.
5 and 7 in Anaheim.
Of the Western Conference Finals.
I needed a hockey fix.
So how good are the Chicago Blackhawks, Al?
Outstanding. I mean, they are really the regal franchise right now. They have a chance to win the Cup for the 3rd time in 6 seasons. I think Joel Quenneville, their coach, he's becoming the Bill Belichick of the NFL in terms of success, not in terms of personality and dealing with the media. I mean, you'll never see Joel say, "We're on to Tampa Bay." I mean, Joel gives you a little bit more than that. But you know, watching Chicago, and for hockey fans, they know, but for people who will tune in and watch the Stanley Cup Finals, I mean, they're such a well-coached team. They've got so many great players. You talked about Jonathan Taves earlier, their captain. Duncan Keith, the defenseman, is fantastic. Patrick Kane, number 88, is maybe the best player in the league right now. I think he's the most exciting player in the league. And I'm giving their numbers out here so people can look for them. They've got this Finnish kid who's about 20 years old, Teuvo Teravainen. I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Mm-hmm. He scares me now because, you know, the Kings have to, somehow get past the Blackhawks year after year. And he's number 86, and this kid is tremendous. And again, you get down to a situation like this. Who's the better goalie? I don't know. Ben Bishop of Tampa Bay. Will it be Corey Crawford of Chicago? That'll have a lot to do to determine, who wins this series.
Ben Bishop looks like an offensive or defensive lineman.
He does.
He's 6'8", Al. I mean, he is a monster big man in between the pipes and moves as if he's 5'8" in a way.
A lot of big goalies in the league, yeah. A little different than when I was growing up, and Gump Worsley was like 5'8", was the goalie for the Rangers. And I'm so old that in those years, goalies didn't even wear masks. And there was one goalie per team, 6 teams in the league. You didn't have a second goalie. These guys played every game. And in every arena, there was what they called a house goalie. This was a guy who had some amateur experience, and he'd come in a suit, and he'd sit in the stands, and he, in case of injury, would come in and fill in for either goalie. So in New York, I remember the guy's name was Schaefer. I think it was Joe Schaefer. And I think he got to play like 2 games. But here's a guy, he'd come in a suit, and if somebody got hurt, this guy would get into the game. They'd give him about 10 minutes to warm up, get dressed, and away you'd go.
Send him a suit for a sweater, basically.
The NHL has come a long way.
Yeah. So what do you make? I'm here with Al Michaels talking about the Stanley Cup Final that's on NBC tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, Chicago at Tampa Bay. What do you make of the Lightning here? I mean, and how they have made this run and bounced last year's Eastern Conference champion Rangers.
Well, you have Steven Stamkos as their key player, but this Tyler Johnson, who really ascended in the playoffs so far, is terrific as well. It's a very well-coached team. I mean, their coach, I don't know him, but John Cooper seems like a really terrific guy. I love, when Pierre Maguire gets to interview the coaches in the middle of the game. He's a very engaging coach. They have home ice advantage, which I'm not sure means anything in hockey. I think home ice or home field or whatever you want to call it.
Well, it certainly didn't matter in the Eastern Conference Final.
It's amazing. It's of course, both Game 7s were won by the visiting team. But, I mean, Tampa, they're fast, they're young, they're good. It's ridiculous to try to predict a winner in this series. I think it's going to make for very entertaining hockey. That's the only thing I'll tell you.
And a neat thing, too, and we have a great affiliate in Detroit, Michigan, Steve Yzerman is putting this team together.
He put it together. He did.
And it's just a neat storyline in that regard. And then you got one of the original 6 in the Chicago Blackhawks taking on the Lightning. Who do you think wins when it's all said and done, Al?
Well, again, I mean, predictions are worthless. It's probably because I've seen Chicago more than Tampa Bay.
Sure.
So I know Chicago better. They're in the same conference as the Kings. Watched them in person twice against Anaheim. So a slight edge to the Chicago Blackhawks. They've got the pedigree, too.
What sort of fan are you when you're sitting there in Staples rooting for the Kings? Are you vocal? Do you pound on the glass?
I don't pound. No, I
You're
don't
not a glass
pound.
pounder?
In the 14th row, it's a little difficult to pound on the glass, so no, I don't do that.
Would you be a glass pounder?
No.
Okay.
I hate that because it's like, what are you pounding on the glass for? Like, what are you going to go there and beat the guys up? Whatever. No, but I love just being a fan. It's great. And being a hockey fan, Steve Russian did a piece in Sports Illustrated about overtime and how great overtime is, sudden death. And you're living on a tightrope. It's like you're the great Wallenda. And I remember after one of the Kings' double overtime games in the playoffs last year, I've known Gary Bettman for a long time, and I called him up and I said, Commissioner, here's how you market your game. You should say that it's the only sport where at the end of the game, the fans are more exhausted than the players. Mm-hmm. It is. Well, you finally went to some games last year. I
hopped the bandwagon.
Nothing like making your debut at the Stanley Cup Final, right?
Well, that's the way we roll in our household.
Right.
Al.
But it's phenomenal because like in a double overtime game, you die in about 60 deaths. I mean, every time your team has the puck, it's like, oh. And then every time the other team has the puck and your goalie has to make a save, oh. Mm. And it goes on like this for, in a double overtime game, it's 4 hours.
I'm here with Al Michaels here on The Rich Eisen Show. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more pucks with this man and certainly about the game with which he's most associated calling, NFL. And we'll also hit on a couple of other topics with you still to come here on the program, if that's okay with you, Al. It's right there.
I'm signed up.
Back in 60 ticks with Al Michaels.
11 seconds. You've got 10 seconds. The countdown going on right now. Morrow up to Silk. 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Yes, February 22nd, 1980, the Miracle on Ice, as called by Al Michaels, who's here in studio. How many times you get people come up to you say that line, Al?
A lot.
Still?
Oh, sure. And it's great because it goes through generations. Now I've got, the father who told the story to his son. Now I've got the son telling the story to his son. So it's been that long. And I think what brought it back into the forefront to a certain degree would have been the movie Miracle, mm-hmm. which is probably about 10 years old right now.
It's a great movie.
Gavin O'Connor did a great job directing it, and Kurt Russell was sensational.
I was on the edge of my seat, fully knowing what was going to
It was crazy.
happen. Yeah.
So that helped to, kind of regenerate things, and then you've had the 30th anniversary and the 35th and all the rest. So, it's one of those things where when people come up to me and say it, it's a father and a son, and I love that because you can tell that the father has transmitted the story to the son, and they just glow.
What was that day like? What was your recollection of that day?
That day, I remember, it's so funny because Ken Dryden, who had just retired as the goalie for the Montreal Canadiens, mm-hmm. one of the best of all time, we walked over to the arena because our hotel was 3 or 4 blocks from the arena, and the game was going to start at 5 o'clock, and it's about 1:30. And the conversation with Dryden was, what we're hoping for? It's only like 3-1 Soviets midway through the second period, because our fear was that it was 6-0 at the end of the first period. The Soviets were so dominant, so good. Kenny played against them. I had watched them a number of times. I understood what they were. So that's all we were hoping for. So, and then you get into the game, and people forget the U.S. trailed 1-0, 2-1, and 3-2. So they made 3 comebacks. They get outshot 39-16. The game ends the way it does, and it's like, what? And then the game ended at about 7:15, and Kenny and I had to stay there to announce Sweden against Finland into a tape machine. Because it sounds crazy now, but 35 years ago, you worried about the tape breaking, and that tape was going to play at 8 o'clock Eastern time, which it did, U.S. against the Soviets. But in case the tape broke or there was a transmission problem or whatever, Rune Arledge had us stay and announce Sweden-Finland to nobody. So I didn't get out of the arena till 11 o'clock at night, and we walked back in a state of both exhaustion and exhilaration.
Yeah, because that was on tape delay. And I remember going through sports blackout, not listening to the radio.
Right.
And not turning on the nightly news to find out what had happened. Did you, when you walked out of the arena and when you went back to your room in your hotel, did you run into people who were just realizing what you had known for several hours?
Well, we walked back to the hotel, and it's almost 11 o'clock, and I ran into my wife and a bunch of other, people who were working at ABC at that time, and they were all they were giddy. They go, oh, wow, that was fantastic. It was unbelievable. What you said at the end of the game I had no idea what I said at the end of the game. I'm calling the game. So it's whatever I said came out of my heart, and I had just done 6 hours of hockey or, 2 full games, and I can't remember exactly what was said at any given time. But as it turned out, it was a nice coda for the end of the game, and people still like it.
Of course, yes, they certainly do, Al. I'm here with Al Michaels here in the studio, and interestingly enough, before that the U.S. national hockey team took center stage in that entire Olympics, the athlete that most Americans associated with the Olympics, Bruce Jenner,
right?
Talk about a different time now, is now known as Caitlyn Jenner. I mean, that's what
I've heard.
I know, and you've seen,
Right.
and he broke Obama's record in getting the most followers on Twitter, or she did.
Yeah.
Broke the most record for most followers on Twitter. And the interesting thing is, there are so many people walking around now who are saying, what happened to the guy on Keeping Up with the Kardashians? Don't know what essentially
right.
Bruce Jenner was as an athlete. You worked with him on Wide World of Sports.
I did a number of times.
So what are your recollections of Bruce Jenner?
Well, at the end of '76, there was no more popular athlete in the United States. He'd won the decathlon. There's nothing like the Olympics. So Bruce retires from competition and then comes to work for ABC. Roone Arledge hires him. He loves all kinds of motor racing. So he and I, his first assignment, it was either in '77 or '78, I get assigned to a motorcycle event in Terre Haute, Indiana, dirt track motorcycle racing, and Bruce is my analyst. So I think it was his ABC debut. So we're there, we're taping this thing for Wide World of Sports, and here he is, the most popular athlete in America, great-looking guy, of course. We're in Terre Haute. I mean, the women are just going insane when they see him, just crazy. And we're down on the track before the event's going to begin. And the event's supposed to begin at, 2 o'clock. So now it's about 10 after 2 because we're having some technical issues doing the scene set to the show, and our producer says, no, you got to do one more. So all of a sudden we went from Bruce, walking out on the track and the women all screaming at him and the guys, hey, Bruce, the whole thing to now we're holding up the event. Hey, you bum, get off the track. Get those guys out of here. We want to see. So all of a sudden, Bruce went from America's hero to get that bum off the track.
Well, they couldn't have expected to have Bruce Jenner stroll out at an event in Terre Haute, Indiana either in 1977.
Right.
I mean, I don't even know what the equivalent of that would be right now here in America. Because again, I know I'm dating myself too. Growing up in New York, when I was looking at Bruce Jenner on Wheaties boxes,
right.
Joe DiMaggio was the guy for the local bank, the Dime Bank, and my parents had to sit me down and go, well, you know what? Joe DiMaggio, he was a pretty darn good baseball player, and it blew my mind. In the same way that also your broadcast partner, John Madden, so many people probably thought he went to the Hall of Fame because of his broadcasting or because he had a video game.
A video game. Oh, sure. You look at Madden through 3 generations. I mean, there's a generation that remembers John as a tremendous coach, 10-year career, won a Super Bowl with Oakland. Then there's a whole generation that, of course, remembers John as the broadcaster. And then there's a whole younger generation that knows John as the man on, Madden 15. So, I mean, John's had, I've said this before, I think John Madden is as important a figure as anybody in the history of pro football. Mm-hmm. Fabulous coach, iconic, trend-setting broadcaster, and the guy behind one of the great selling video games of all time. And
I would be remiss with Al Michaels here in studio if I did not ask you who you thought was going to trot out onto the field the first Thursday night of the season, wearing a Patriot uniform and going under center with a properly inflated football we all are imagining. Who do you think that quarterback is going to be?
I think it'll be Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. Roger Goodell's going to look at this again, obviously. They'll have a hearing. If I had to guess, I think it'll stick. Maybe it gets reduced. I don't know. That's my best guess. And I know Dan Patrick asked me, well, if we do, and it's a Sunday night game, the 5th game of the season would be New England at Indianapolis.
Yes, it would. So well, it would be week 6.
It would be week 6. They have a bye week, but it's a Sunday night game, so it will be our game. And Dan said, well, how do you think you'll open up that game if the suspension sticks? And I said, Chris, very interesting. I said, the Patriots are 4-0. Garoppolo has a 140 pass rating. So what do you do with Tom Brady tonight?
As I've mentioned here, Ted Wells as Mo Lewis. That would be
exactly.
He would be the Mo Lewis role in this whole equation. That's what
Right.
everyone expects of them. There was a bye week in Week 4. There was a game at Dallas Week 5, and
Right.
then that Week 6 game Sunday night, and then the following week they're home against the Jets, their first home game.
Right.
After all, again, if the
You'll be
4-game
there.
suspension sticks, well, the whole deal with that would maybe that's the night they raise the banner. Because you know Mr. Kraft very well. Do you think he raises the banner if Tom Brady's not there night one, even though he is obviously a league owner?
I do, because the team won the Super Bowl. So I don't know. I haven't talked to Bob Kraft about it. I don't know what he'll do. But I can't imagine you'd have opening night, you're the world champions, and not raising the banner. I mean, it is a team sport. So, I just think, that would be my guess. I mean, it's the championship moment. It's kind of become a tradition, and I'd be surprised if they didn't raise it that night.
Do you have a thought on the Belmont at all?
That horse, American Pharoah, looks fantastic, but I don't know. I did the Triple Crown for a number of years, and 8 or 9 times now since it was last won in 1978, a horse has had an opportunity to do it. In 1998, I'll never forget, Real Quiet, ironically trained by Bob Baffert, had a 4-length lead at the 16th pole in the Belmont. This horse was going to win the Triple Crown, and then got overtaken by Victory Gallop in the last 16th of a mile. So, I mean, it's a mile and a half. You never know what's going to happen. I'd love to see it happen, though. It's been so long. People talk about it, 37 years, and I mean, this horse clearly has the ability to do it. We'll see.
Did you see Hollywood Park go up in smoke?
Oh, God, I hated that. I know, because I loved Hollywood Park. When I went to high school here, my mother used to take me out of school. She'd come with a dentist excuse to the principal. I have to take Alan out of school because he has a dentist appointment. The dentist appointment would be at Hollywood. My mother loved it. My mother loved the races more than I did, and so we'd be down there in time for the day. And there it was, getting imploded just this past weekend.
The grandstands of your youth that you were supposedly getting your root canal or something.
I was.
Alan Michaels,
and that
too.
grandstand got a root canal the other day. Yes, Alan has, and then, but my mother through the years. I mean, at one point, not only did I have a dentist appointment, but one of my pals did. And then the principal caught on the day my mother came in, and there were 3 of us that needed to go for dental appointments.
So when we hear in a 3-touchdown game on Sunday Night Football, somebody score from the 1-yard line to make it a 4-touchdown game, and you say somebody goes over the goal line. Do we credit your mother for putting this in your DNA?
We probably do.
We?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it goes all the way back. And my father loved to, go to the races as well. But he was very upstanding. There's no way my mother could tell my father I'm taking Alan out of school to miss school. Means my father would take me there on the weekends, which was one thing. But my mother would look at the form the night before, and if we had to get there for the double, we had the root canal.
And then and then you never know. Maybe you'll be calling a Sunday night game there or a Super Bowl game from that spot one day. Who knows?
Possibly. Yeah. Right? I mean, that's where the stadium would be if Stan Kroenke has his way.
Al Michaels here on the Rich Eisen Show. It is great to see you, sir. I'd love having you on here. Really, really
great.
Do. I'd love to have you on.
It's a long trip for me. It took me 18 minutes to get here.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.